Erev Tov and good evening, everyone. We are in Shimshon tonight, and we're going to be learning one of his pieces about Shmini Atzeret. It can be found in Parsha Pinchas. The reason it's in Parsha Pinchas is because towards the end of that parsha, there's the Torah lists the Chagim, lists the Jewish holidays, and there's, of course, Shmini Atzeret is listed there, as are all the Moadim. And we're in Os Vav on Parshas Pinchas, section 6, which can be found in the sefer on Daf Reish Nun Tes. So let us jump right in. The Zera Shimshon says, Yalkut. This is, he's going to quote from the Yalkut Shimoni on Sefer Tehillim. Al Pasuk, on the Pasuk, Zer Hayom Asa Hashem Nagila V'nismechavo. This is the day that Hashem made. Let us celebrate and rejoice in it. So this, of course, is a very appropriate pasuk for where we are in the Chag HaSukkos, because we say this pasuk every day in Hallel, very famous pasuk from Perek Kuf Yud Ches 118, chapter 118 in Tehillim. And the Yalkut Shimoni comments on this pasuk. Amar Rabbi Avin. Rabbi Avin said, Ein anu yodim bameh lismoach. From this pasuk, we don't know exactly in what we should celebrate. The pasuk tells us to rejoice and celebrate, but it's not exactly clear in what we are celebrating. Im bayom, if it's on the day. Im behakadosh baruch hu, if it's celebrating in Hashem. So what does this mean? What it means is that the last word in the pasuk, Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha vo, the last word is vo. And vo can be translated as either in it or in him. So Rabbi Avin says, if we translate it in it, then it's a reference to the day. In it, celebrate the day. If we translate it as in him, then it's a reference to Hashem. And we should celebrate Hashem, celebrate in our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But from the pasuk, it's vague. We don't know which one it is. Ba Shlomo Upirish. So the Yalkut Shimoni continues that Shlomo HaMelech came along. And in Sefer Shir HaShirim, he explained what was missing, or what we needed to still understand, what we needed to know about David HaMelech's pasuk in Tehillim. How did Shlomo HaMelech do that? Because in the first parak of Shir HaShirim, parak Aleph, pasuk Daled, Shlomo HaMelech says, Nagila v'nismecha bach. We celebrate and we rejoice in you. So you see, it's talking about in Hashem, as the Yalkut Shimoni continues. Bach b'yeshuascha, in you, meaning in your salvation. Bach b'yiroscha, in you, meaning in your awe, and the awe that all creation feels towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bach b'sorasecha, in you, meaning we celebrate in your Torah. So the question, Rabbi Avin's question has been answered. The Yalkut Shimoni is going to conclude in a moment with one more line, but we see that Rabbi Avin's question was answered. Did the pasuk Zeh Yom Asa Hashem Nagila V'nismecha Vo celebrate in it or in him? Which one did it mean? So he answers. Shlomo teaches us that it means in Hashem. We celebrate in Hashem. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak concludes this piece in the Yalkut Shimoni. Bach, when it says in you, it means it's also alluding to B'chaf Beis Osios Shekasafta Lanu Batorah, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet that Hashem wrote the Torah using those letters. Beis Shnaim, so the Beis of the word Bach equals 2. Chaf Esrim, and the Chaf equals 20. Hare Bach, this is equals 22. Ad kan Lashono, until here is a quote from the Yalkut Shimoni. So the Zera Shimshon with this paragraph has introduced the idea that in the pasuk Zeh Yom Asa Hashem Nagila V'nismecha Vo, there's a certain vagueness, there's a certain lack of clarity, and that's the question that Rabbi Avin asked about the pasuk. Are we celebrating the day? Are we celebrating Hashem? And then it brought the answer from Shir HaShirim that we are celebrating Hashem, and that's what the focus should be on, about celebrating in Hashem, Hashem's Torah, the yira that we feel towards Hashem, and also the 22 letters that Hashem used to write the Torah, which Hashem gave us. So we're celebrating the Torah and we're celebrating Hashem. It's all about Hashem, and that's what the celebration is about in this pasuk in Tehillim, according to the Yalkut Shimon. Now the Zera Shimshon is going to ask two questions on this piece from the Yalkut Shimon. Here's the first one. Kosher, we have a problem. Mahu hasafek shenolad lo b'pasuk zeh. What was the doubt? What was the question that was seemingly born to Rabbi Avin, meaning it was introduced for the first time? It came up for the first time in this pasuk in Tehillim, from Tehillim, Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagilav nismachavo. What was this doubt exactly? V'halo, and isn't it true? Gam below pasuk zeh. Even without this pasuk, if we never looked at that pasuk, yesh lanu hasafek, we would have the same exact doubt. We'd have the same exact question, not ever even looking at the pasuk in Tehillim. Why? Well, how would we have the question before that pasuk in Tehillim? Mishum detrei kroi ksivi, because in the Torah itself, two psukim are written that create the same question, that introduce the same question. Atzeres Lashem Elokecha. In Sefer Devarim, when the Torah talks about Shmini Atzeres, so it says you should celebrate the holiday of Sukkot, Chag HaSukkos, for 7 days. And then it says, Atzeres Lashem Elokecha. And then the next day, you should have a special assembly in Atzeres, a special assembly for Hashem, your God. That's what the pasuk in Devarim, how it refers to Shmini Atzeres. And then another pasuk from Bamidbar says, Atzeres tiyeh lochem. It does the same thing. It talks about the 7 days of celebrating the holiday of Sukkot, and then it says, and after the last day, the next day, the 8th day, you should have a special assembly, tiyeh lochem, and it should be for you, for the Jewish people. So we have a question based on those two psukim that's extremely similar to the question that was raised in the Yalkut Shimoni, which is, how do we celebrate Shmini Atzeres? And by extension, how do we celebrate any of the special holidays that Hashem granted us, that Hashem bestowed to us? Is it about Hashem? Is it a day when we celebrate the holiday, we should be celebrating it for Hashem and focusing on spiritually connecting with Hashem? Or lachem, is it a holiday for us? Is the Torah saying this is a special day for you and you should celebrate in ways that are special to you, with wonderful meals, with the family coming together, with eating and drinking? And so that question already appears from these two psukim without ever looking at the pasuk in Tehillim, as the Zera Shimshon goes on to talk about. V'al korchach tzarech l'taretz. And you are compelled to answer the question about these two psukim that seem to contradict each other in the Torah. As the Gemara says, as we say in the beginning of the second parak of Meseches Yom Tov. Meseches Yom Tov is a nickname or another name for Meseches Be'ah. So over there, the Gemara says, it raises this question of the apparent contradiction between the two psukim that are talking about Shmini Atzeres. And the Gemara says, this is actually the subject of a machlokas tanoim, an argument amongst two tanoim, about what to do with these psukim. Ika Rebbe Eliezer, if you follow the view of Rebbe Eliezer, kulo lashem, o kulo lachem. The Torah is giving you a choice that each year you get to make. When Shmini Atzeres comes, or for that matter, Chazal tell us when any holiday, when any Chag comes, you can look at the two psukim and you can go either way. You can say, this is Lashem Elokecha, this is a special day to be totally devoted to Hashem and learning Torah and davening and spiritual pursuits. Or you have the option to follow the other pasuk. And the other pasuk says, Lachem, this is a special day to you, and you can totally devote it to eating and drinking and sleeping and taking naps and taking walks and being with the family and things that you enjoy for that holiday, for that special day. That's Rabbi Eliezer's view, that the Torah is in a unique way, giving us a choice to follow either one of the two psukim. The Torah is saying both are valid approaches and both are valid ways to celebrate the Chag. Ika Rabbi Yoshua, or there's another way to handle the two psukim, and that is the view of Rabbi Yoshua, Chelkehu, which is every time Shmini Atzeret comes, or again, for that matter, another Yom Tif day, a Chag comes, you divide it up. Chetzio Lashem vechetzio lachem. Half should be done for the spiritual pursuits of getting closer to Hashem, learning Torah, etc. And half of the day should be spent with things that the person enjoys, the eating, the drinking, the meals, etc. So we see there's a machlokes between the two Tanoim, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, as to how to deal with the fact that the Torah gives us these two psukim. So the Zera Shimshon continues, V'hachi nami b'pasuk hazeh, yochol l'taretz kach. And so too with the pasuk from Tehillim that was brought in the Yalkut Shimoni, the same exact answer should have been used and could and should have been used. Dehoil demipashte dekra lo muchach im bayom im behakadosh baruch hu. Since the Yalkut Shimoni observed that when you look at the pasuk Zehayom Os Hashem Nagila v'nismecha vo, it's not clear from those words what it's talking about. Is it talking about celebrating the day, or is it talking about celebrating Hashem? If so, then they are both equal. Both explanations of that pasuk in Tehillim should be considered valid. And we should be mekayim both of them. We should go with both interpretations. Because which of them can you toss out? You can't toss out either way of understanding the pasuk. O Kisvaris Rabbi Eliezer, and we would either follow the view of Rabbi Eliezer regarding Shmini Atzeret, who, when he said that you have to devote yourself, you're being given a choice, devote yourself either totally to Hashem or totally to enjoying the day in your own human physical way. O Kisvaris Rabbi Yoshua, or take what Rabbi Yoshua's view was and divide the special days that Hashem gives us in half and do Chatzi Lashem v'Chatzi Lachem. And so why did Rabbi Avin have a doubt as to how to handle the pasuk in Tehillim? This first question of the Zera Shimshon, it's important that we understand it completely and fully. So let's just recap to make sure we understand the question. We started off again with the pasuk in Tehillim, and the Zera Shimshon brought the Yalkut Shimoni that pointed out, Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha vo. This is the day that Hashem has made. Let us celebrate and rejoice. And it's not clear as to how long, it's not clear as to exactly what pasuk, what part of the pasuk it's referring to. The celebration is referring to what? Celebrating the day or celebrating Hashem, meaning celebrating the day in physical ways or celebrating the day in spiritual ways of connecting to Hashem. So Rabbi Avin in the Yalkut Shimoni says, I don't know which one it means. And then he brought in a pasuk from Shir Hashirim, from Shlomo Melech, to answer the question and say it's talking about totally focusing on Hashem. So there's something not right here. That question should never have been asked. Why? Because this whole issue has already been dealt with in the Gemara regarding psukim in the Torah. And certainly Rabbi Avin, who the Yalkut Shimoni quoted, should have been familiar with the machlokas Tanoim about how to celebrate Shmini Atzeret and how to deal with the apparent contradiction between the two psukim, the one that says that Shmini Atzeret should be a day Lashem Elokecha, for Hashem Atzeret Lashem Elokecha, a special assembly for Hashem your God, versus the other pasuk that says it should be Atzeret Lachem, it should be a special assembly for you. So that question was already dealt with, and it was dealt with in two different ways, the view of Rabbi Eliezer or the view of Rabbi Yoshua. So Rabbi Avin, instead of asking a question, as if it was a new question about the pasuk in Tehillim, should have used the approach from our Gemara and Maseches Beya and the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua as to what to do on Shmini Atzeret, and he should have applied that to the pasuk of Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha vo, and he should have said, okay, it's very simple. When we have a special day that Hashem created, a special holiday, you have two options. You have the option of Rabbi Eliezer, which is take a choice each year and decide, is it going to be totally dedicated to Hashem or totally dedicated to our own physical enjoyment of the day? Or follow Rabbi Yoshua and divide up the day. That's it. No need to act like there's a new question and he has to give a new answer and he doesn't know what to do and he has a big suffix, a big doubt. Let him simply look at the Gemara in Maseches Beya and the Machlokas Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua and use that to answer his question. That is the Zera Shimshon's first major question. Now he's going to ask a second question. V'gam la'achar shetirates, and even after the Yalkut Shimoni answered the question, boch b'yeshua secha, boch v'chulei, that we learned that it's referring to celebrating Hashem based on the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, which says we nagila v'nismacha boch, we celebrate and we rejoice in you, Hashem, in you and in your Torah and in your year and the awe that we feel for you. So after it gives that answer, that all of the rejoicing should be about Hashem. Now we have a different question and another problem. Bein the Rabbi Eliezer, bein the Rabbi Yoshua, whether or not you follow the view of Rabbi Yoshua or the view of Rabbi Eliezer or the view of Rabbi Yoshua. V'gam ala pasuk atzmo kosher, and even on the pasuk itself, there's a question. Lo maksiv lachem. Why in the Torah would it ever say lachem to you? The mashma nami lachem, that implies that the people have something to do. There's something special that's going to happen for the people and their physical enjoyment. Okulo, whether it means completely. Ochetzio, or half of the day. Lemar kidi islay ulemar kidi islay, according to one of the Tanoim in his opinion, meaning Rabbi Eliezer, or according to the other Tana, Rabbi Yoshua, in his opinion. So the Zera Shimshon says, if we take the Yalkut Shimoni at face value, it asks the question about the pasuk saying we don't know what to celebrate the day physically or celebrate the day spiritually, totally devoted to Hashem. And then it answered from Shir Hashirim, from the pasuk that Shlomo Melech says it's totally has to be about Hashem. So the Zera Shimshon says if it's totally about Hashem, that means you not only aren't taking into account the Gemara in Maseches Beya with the argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, not only you're not taking into account, but you're rejecting it. Because over there, they take the psukim both psukim in the Torah about Shmini Atzeret into account. And they say, we have to have a portion of lachem, whether that means half of the day every year, or totally devoted to ourselves, but in alternate years. Either way, according to either opinion in that Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, lachem is taken very seriously. The Torah is saying you have to take yourself and your physical needs. There's something special to grab onto on the Yom Tov. But according to the Yalkut Shimoni, it's B'cha, it's all about Hashem and spiritually getting close to Hashem, which is beautiful and wonderful, but it completely ignores and goes against the Tanoim in Maseches Beya. And how could that be? How could Rabbi Avin do that? So that's the second question. Now the Zera Shimshon is going to begin to answer at the bottom of the column. V'yesh lomar, and we can say, de bishloma im lo hayachsiv bo. It would make sense if the pasuk in Tehillim had not ended with the word vo, in it or in him. If that word vo wasn't there, it would have made sense. Elazeh hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismacha. The pasuk could have just said, this is the day that Hashem made, let us rejoice and let us be happy, v'su lo, and nothing more. Didn't have to have the last word vo, in it or in him. That word vo was the word that got us in trouble. That was the word that we had, that was vague, that we didn't know who it referred to. So if that word had not been in the pasuk, shopir matzinin lefarish nagila v'nismacha, then we would have easily been able to explain the pasuk, I karebi Eliezer, O karebi Yehoshua, whether according to either Rabbi Eliezer or according to Rabbi Yoshua. We would have been able to explain it either way. Aval hasafik shel Rabbi Avin, but the reason that Rabbi Avin had a doubt about what to do with the pasuk in Tehillim is, hu mishum, it is because dichsiv vo, it's written at the end, that word does appear, and it says vo, the mashma miuta, which when you have a standard drasha and you talk about in it or in him, it implies that you are excluding something else. Bo v'lo ba'acher, in it and not in something else. That's how the word bo operates when you're doing a real drasha, a classical drasha on a pasuk. So if the Torah says in it, it means in it, whatever it's talking about, but not in something else. Or if it says b'cha, in you, it means only in you, but not someone else. And so that's how a drasha would normally operate. And that's what Rabbi Avin was trying to figure out. Is this a real drasha on the word bo? And if so, what is it excluding? What is the mute? What is being excluded? The tirates, and therefore Rabbi Avin gave an answer, Sheba Shlomo upirish v'chule. Shlomo came and explained the word to be referring to Hashem. Klomar dehai bo eno lema'et. What is really being said, the real meaning of that answer based on the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, is that this is not a real drasha. We're not operating with the real rules of how a drasha would work when we interpret a pasuk in the standard way. And this word bo, in it or in him, doesn't mean to exclude anything. Ela lirmos, it's coming actually to hint something to us. Shahakol yeh b'yiras Hashem. Everything we do should be based on our yiras Hashem, our awe of Hashem, our awareness of Hashem's presence. Sha'afilu ha'achila v'hanos haguf tiyeh b'yiraso. Even eating and even pleasure of the body, physical pleasure, should be b'yiraso, should include and incorporate awe and awareness and fear of Hashem. Since we know that someone who eats and has physical enjoyment, if it's Lashem Shemayim, if it's done for a heavenly purpose, Nikra Davik BeHaKadosh Baruch Hu, that person is referred to as someone who is clinging and connected to Hashem, even though they're doing something that's extremely physical. They're eating and drinking, they're supplying their body to doing what could be viewed as a purely physical act. No. They're doing a physical act, but they're doing it Lashem Shamayim. They're doing it for a heavenly purpose. For example, on Shabbos, when we eat a Seudah Shabbos, it's a mitzvah. And if we have the right intention to be eating that delicious Shabbos meal to honor HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to honor Shabbos, then that is considered Dovak HaKadosh Baruch Hu, connecting to Hashem. Im kain hai kra de nagila v'nismecha bach. Then when we look at the pasuk of we will rejoice and celebrate in you, that's the pasuk in the first parak in Shir Hashirim, ein lanu hechrich lomar shekach rotza lomar davka be'akadosh baruch hu v'lo be'achilu v'shtiya. When we look at that pasuk, we don't know if it means celebrate Hashem to the exclusion of something physical, that it can't. We aren't able to say that it can't be referring to eating and drinking and other physical pleasures. Why? Because we know that physical pleasures, if they're done L'Shem Shemayim, is also a way of connecting to Hashem. Elamash manami b'cha b'yirasecha. But what it's really coming to teach us is when you do these physical acts, connect to Hashem and your awareness of Hashem and your fear of Hashem. Meaning do the physical acts L'Shem Shemayim. And that's why in the Yalkut it continued and it said, what does it mean celebrate in Hashem? It means celebrate with an awareness of Hashem, celebrate through the Torah of Hashem when you do mitzvos that have a physical component, have in mind that it's L'Shem Shamayim. And that's why at the end of the piece in the Yalkut Shimoni, Rabbi Yitzchak added his little point about the 22 letters of the alphabet, Shekasafta, that Hashem wrote the Torah. Lomar, meaning to say, She'eno ela remez ba'alma, meaning to say this is only a hint to teach us something. It's not an actual drasha where the word bo should be understood to be excluding something else. This word bo is actually bringing in a new teaching. It's teaching us a new thing. It's not coming to exclude something the way a normal drasha would work. That's why he's referring to it as a remez, as a hint to teach us something, as opposed to a miyut, an exclusion to exclude something else that we would think should be included in the pasuk. So now the Zera Shimshon has explained for us, he's answered his his questions about why Rabbi Avin in the Yalkut Shimoni asked a question on the Pasuk in Tehillim when he could have simply answered the Pasuk, apparently from the Machlokas Tanoim in the Gemara Maseches Beah. And the answer is that Rabbi Avin was bothered by the word bo. Without the word bo, Rabbi Avin would not have asked his question. But the word bo, Rabbi Avin says, teaches us we're excluding something. What are we excluding? What kind of drush is being used here? We don't seem to be excluding anything. So he answers that the word bo in Zera Yom Asa Hashem Nagila V'Nismachal Vo, that word is actually coming to include, and it's not coming to exclude. And he proves that from the Pasuk in Shir Hashirim, where Shlomo Melech talks about celebrating and rejoicing in Hashem. What does that mean? Even our physical rejoicing, our eating and our drinking and our physical pleasure, if it's done l'shem shamayim, is a way of connecting to Hashem. That's the point that the Yalkut Shimoni is teaching us according to the Zera Shimshon. And now he continues. Ume'ata, and from now, meaning now that we understand all of that, we understand the real teaching and the real point of the piece in the Yalkut Shimoni. Yotzalanu tam hagun. Now we have an excellent reason, lama dafka shlomo pirish hadavar, why it is that they brought the pasuk from Shir Hashirim and said, this is what Shlomo HaMelech is teaching us. V'lo shum acher, and not a different person. Shehoil shematzinu shebe'es binyan beis hamikdash asa Shlomo es achad b'simcha gedola. We see that when Shlomo HaMelech built the first Beis HaMikdash, he did it with incredible, unprecedented rejoicing. Uvimishtos gedolos, and with huge parties, massive, giant celebrations that included all of the Jewish people. Shlomo organized at the time of the building of the first Beis HaMikdash. Shenemar, as the Pasuk tells us, and this is from Malachim Aleph, where Shlomo's building of the first Beis HaMikdash is described in great detail. And the Pasuk says, Shivas Yomim v'Shivas Yomim, they celebrated for 7 days, and then they celebrated for another 7 days. Arba Asar Yom v'chulei, and the Pasuk says this altogether they celebrated for 14 days of massive nationwide celebrations. By the way, what were those 7 and 7? So the first 7 days started 7 days before the holiday of Sukkot. So if you look in the Psukim there, you'll see they celebrated for 7 days leading up to the holiday of Sukkot, and those 7 days were the 7 days of inaugurating Shivas Yimei HaMiluim, of inaugurating the first Beis HaMikdash, and then they celebrated the 7 days of Chag HaSukkot. So Shlomo Melech built his celebration around the holiday of Sukkot, 7 days leading up to the holiday of Sukkot, then the 7 days of Sukkot, and all of that was the 14 days of the celebrating. Of course, they then celebrated Shmini Atzeret, but that was a separate aspect. That was separate from the 14 days of celebrating, and that was totally focused on the building of the first Beis HaMikdash. Nisyare Shlomo. So Shlomo had a fear. Shlomo had a concern based on this massive celebration. Pen yilmedu mimenu b'nei adam, that perhaps people in that his own time and people in the future would learn. Liyos kol hayom ochlim v'shosin. They would learn that what does celebration mean? It means like what he did, massive parties and massive eating and drinking. V'lolios klal yoshrim v'shonim. And they wouldn't understand that celebrating also involves sitting and learning. Umishum hachi ka'amar nagila v'nismacha bach. And that's why he said, Shlomo said in Shir Hashirim, we will celebrate and we will rejoice in you. She'af she'ba'oso apam ochlu v'shasu kol hayom. Even though during those days they ate and drank and there was food set out for all of the people to eat and drink all day. Mikol mokom b'pam acheres yochol la'asoso kulo l'Hashem. Nonetheless, Shlomo wanted everyone to know the fact that we celebrated this way, in this manner, this year with very physical rejoicing doesn't mean that for future holidays and future chagim, you have to do it this way. You can celebrate with spiritual pursuits, totally devoted to getting close to Hashem. Kedas Rabbi Eliezer, which is according to the view of Rabbi Eliezer. O ochel v'shose, o yoshev v'shoneh. Or you can eat and drink and sit and learn, split the day up in half, which is the view of Rabbi Yoshua. But the point Shlomo Melech wanted to make was that even when you're doing the eating and the drinking, it must be l'shem shamayim. It must be for the sake of heaven and to get close to Hashem. U'l'shem mitzvah, and for the purpose of doing a mitzvah. Kemosha asu b'mei Shlomo, which is exactly what they did during this massive celebration in the time of Shlomo. She'asu osan ha'seudos. They made their huge festive meals, l'shem simchas mitzvah dafka, only for the purpose, specifically for the purpose of l'shem mitzvah, for the purpose of doing the mitzvah of celebrating the building of the first base Hamikdash. So the Zera Shimshon has taken us on a wonderful and inspiring journey. He started with a little piece in the Yalkut Shimoni, and he said, if you understand it, if you take it at face value, I have some major questions on this piece in the Yalkut Shimoni. And then he explained to us what was really going on was an effort to teach us the extremely vital lesson that there are plenty of times in the Torah, plenty of times in Jewish life when we're commanded, not just given permission, we're commanded to celebrate in very physical ways with eating and drinking and enjoying the day and being together with our family. And the teaching is that every time we do that, as long as we do it l'shem shamayim, for the purpose of getting close to Hashem and for the purpose of doing a mitzvah, if that's our true kavanah, our true intention, then it is equal to and equivalent to totally connecting to Hashem as if we were doing it through purely spiritual methods and spiritual pursuits. V'chein yi ratzon, it should be Hashem's will to grant us the ability to do that now during the Chag of Sukkot that we're presently enjoying and celebrating, and then of course also during the upcoming Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah. Yasher koach to everyone for joining us, and God willing, we look forward to learning Zera Shimshon again next week.